What is a crack, everyone? It's Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Kern School of Combat. So first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Huge thank you to everyone who has watched the channel over the past year. We've just passed the 1500 subscriber mark. I really did not think I would do that. I'm just so thankful to you all. So once again, thank you for that. If you'd like to support my work and support future endeavours, I have a lot of really fun and cool stuff planned for this year. You can join my Patreon, you'll find that down below, and you'll find kind of links in the description. Anyway, on the topic of this video, this question I saw appear on Reddit the other day, and I thought it quite an interesting one to cover because I think this is something that's not just misinterpreted when it comes to Ireland, but something that's misinterpreted when it comes to Europe and the medieval world as a whole. And that is, why do we not see more swords being produced in Ireland? Or why do we not see a lot of the Irish swords that we know of with Irish made blades? So I'm going to divide this into kind of three separate eras, which are kind of also quite in line with the kind of three major sword groups that we have in Ireland. And I'll bring these up on screen as I discuss them. So it's worth noting that we have these kind of production centres in Europe that are the go-to places for producing swords. And this is true from pretty much the Viking Age all the way through to almost the kind of modern age, like into the Industrial Revolution. These were the same areas that were notorious for making blades and were the go-to places for getting them. And as a result, if you needed a blade, it was very likely that it was much cheaper and easier to just order an off-the-shelf blade and finish it at home. So this is something that people kind of get mistaken. I think Hollywood really leans into this trope a lot of, I want a sword, I go to a blacksmith. That isn't in any way correct. So one of the things that I think people get wrong is that there's so many different things that go on in a sword. I'm actually going to grab an example, so 1 second. So, one of the things that people don't really understand or think about when they think about swords, and this is the wonderful example I have from Nilo Sword. I have a video on this, and I'll be doing a review video of this in the next few months, and a full testing video as well. So this is a very, very close replica to two examples of Irish kind of late medieval, early Renaissance single-handed sword. And with most of these blades, the ones that we have in Europe, the examples that we have, examples in Ireland I should say, the blades clearly come from mainland Europe. And one of the things that people get wrong when you think about swords is that, oh, I just go to a blacksmith to get a sword. And that is very, very misleading, because if you want a sword, especially in the times of medieval Europe, there's often multiple different industries involved in it. And that's the thing that people really get wrong. So to produce the blade itself is an industry of its own. So you have iron smelters, that's one industry. And I'm going to bring up kind of images of these to kind of show you the scale and the equipment needed to do it. So you have your iron smelters, you have your actual bladesmiths who just bang out the blade blanks themselves. You have your leather workers for doing the handles, potentially even carpenters who will make up the handles themselves. You have grinders for finishing the blade. This is a huge industry. There was huge industry across Europe, and you see this in Milan, especially for armor. All these setups, and some of which are still in northern Italy, for grinding and finishing blades. And you'll see these large water wheels for doing it. And even to take one step back, even like the production of ore. You see the image I found here of a large water wheel used for crushing ore. That in itself is a very laborious job. So you could then take that, produce your charcoal or whatever other fuel, later coke, for your blast furnace. And then you've got to produce your ore, and then you've got to refine that down into the blade itself, and then that might get shipped off to the next person who's going to grind it into the shape you want, and then that might get shipped off again to go to a heat treat, and then that might get shipped off again to go to someone who puts the hilt furniture on. So by that I mean the pommel and the crossguard, and the handle might be done by a carpenter, and you might have a leather worker who does that separately. Now, this isn't always the case. Often people are doing a lot of these in the one place. However, it's often much cheaper and more economical to just get someone to order in a blade blank and then finish the blade in one place. So it's something that people kind of don't think about, is that there is this huge industry in the production of blades. It's not simply I go to a blacksmith, they take a piece of bar off the shelf and make a sword out of it. There's so many tiers of industry that have to be gone through to produce a piece of steel to make a sword blade, never mind the actual process of making the sword blade itself. And that's one of the big reasons why we don't see sword blades in Ireland. So the earlier swords, you have basically what we call like the knightly sword, the kind of classic early kind of post-Norman period style blade that you would expect to see. And these the blades of these generally seem to come from Bordeaux and the Rhineland and across Northern Europe. And I'll reference to Andrew Halpin's work. He has a fantastic study on these kind of three main groups of blades. Later we have example, I don't have one, I would like to get one, of what are kind of referred to as they're almost like a Scottish, very uniquely Scottish and Irish style of sword with a kind of V crossguard on it. And these ones are very interesting because some of these seem to have been possibly made in Ireland or Scotland. There's definitely some of them were definitely made in Scotland. And these are very unique, both in their design, their shape, and their finish. There's not really any other swords of the period that are similar to them. Now, the first group generally seems to be almost all of those blades were made on mainland Europe. The second group seems like some of these were probably made in mainland Europe, but most of them seem to have been done in mainland Europe, with one or two that we have, obviously surviving examples, seem to have perhaps been made in Scotland or possibly in Ireland. Then we get to the final group, which is these, the ring pommel swords, so-called for these little ring pommels, of which they're famous for, and it's very famous shape. Now there are plenty of blades with this S-shaped guard across Europe. Whether or not there's any kind of family or similar traits with these blades across Europe, I don't know. There's not really any information out there to say that there is, but it very much seems like these ones were made especially for the Irish and the Irish market. Like this sort of a blade shape and style at the time was becoming somewhat kind of antiquated. It was very much an older style. But the blades themselves almost all seem to be made in Northern Europe, across Germany and that kind of Central Western Europe. So it was something that I kind of wanted to touch on. Yes, there are beam blades most definitely being finished in Ireland, because you don't see this finish on blades in mainland Europe. So these were clearly being finished in Ireland, but they're not being produced in Ireland. So it's kind of one of those context questions, I guess, as Matt Easton would say, that yes, some of them were technically made in Ireland because most likely they were finished in Ireland, so you could technically say they were made here, but the blades themselves and most of the components were made elsewhere, shipped to Ireland, and then finished here because it was a much cheaper, much more economical way of doing it. Just like today, if you wanted to produce a sword, you're not going to go out and look for ore and dig it out of the ground and produce ore and refine that down into bar and make steel. You're just going to go to a shop and go to a steel wholesaler and order the piece of steel that you need. It was exactly the same in the medieval period. You would just go and get the pieces that you need, the material that you needed, and then you would finish that, and you bring it to individual craftsmen who specialise in those areas and get them to finish it. And it's the same in Ireland. And as time progresses, we didn't have the industrial centres that you'd see in other parts of Europe. And that's kind of due to multiple reasons. So we didn't really have the necessary industry built around refining the raw ingredients. So we didn't have places refining iron. that you see in Germany and northern Italy. And you also don't see the push kind of governmentally for that to be done. You do see that in England, with the armories being brought in, especially by, I believe it's Henry VIII, who bring in and create their own armories, but noticing the need to have a home base for production of arms. So most of the weapons here are being used in the large cities, which were, at first by the Vikings and the Normans and the English. Most of these weapons were imported already because these were people from other areas. They brought that with them and they had supply lines, they brought stuff in. So the indigenous Irish were basically just buying off them, changing things into what they liked and what suited to them, and then coming up with their own unique style, but using foreign-made equipment. So I know that's a bit of a rambling video, but that is the purpose of the channel. I do hope you enjoyed it. I know this kind of covers a pretty broad period and a lot of kind of families of swords. If you have any questions on that, please do let me know. Feel free to join my Patreon. Like I said, it is down in the description. I am taking video suggestions from my patrons on there. I will also be doing videos especially for my patrons, as well as answering questions for them and giving them sneak peeks to things that I have coming in the next few weeks, months and years. Some of which are very exciting, and I do hope you guys will be here to check it out. And if you have enjoyed this, please do like, comment, subscribe and share the videos around. It really does help. The channel's growing immensely and I really can't thank you guys enough. So once again, thank you very much, and so long.